out and buy goods and services that allows the economy to hum, and everybody grows, and you get a bigger return on investment than the investment of putting the money in their hands. That's why it's a business model.
I have a question about that, right? So with the tariffs, right, doesn't the making of tariffs also cause some kind of impulse to inflation? Do you think that's the case?
Yes, it's cutting the supply based on artificial cost and premium that's placed on it. It is, in fact, a war. It is a trade war. Not, as everybody thinks, profitable. It's only profitable for the munitions makers. Okay, that's the exception. There's only 5% of the economy is related to war. 95% of the actual economy, the global economy, is based on production, and it limits production artificially. So yes, it causes inflation for sure.
So that's GDP, and if each country's GDP, is on, say, a globe.
Not to correct you, Ashton, but not GDP. We're talking about the rate of inflation is what Aleph was at.
Okay, the rate of inflation, but that still can be affected by tariffs, and tariffs are affected.
Yeah, he agrees. Yeah, that's what he's saying.
So one other thing, it was like a step before. I think somebody was saying about the government, right? So if you were going to generate UBI, right, from like, say, AI, access to data, and also AI profits, from using our data, I think that the government, if they capture part of those profits, that would lower the threshold, right? For what we would receive.
Absolutely, yeah. Like a utility. Like I have a project that I'm supporting now that's launching communities built around a model like that, where they're funding the community off of income, off of data center usage, where they're not like going out and selling it to anybody. It's like on a permanent feed being sucked up by the use of AIs using it computing power, and they just sell it like selling electricity back to the grid. And it funds a whole bunch of projects.
And that's good, because I will tell you, real life here, Texas has asked for some of these companies that are doing a lot of whatever you want to call it, mining. I don't know much about that kind of stuff. That's new age crap, whatever. But that stuff,
yeah, you're right.
it generates so much power that the state of Texas, has asked these companies that pull off the grid, yes, to please somehow either use solar and all of that. Even in the country, when I've looked up a lot of this, the grid in America is really old and outdated in some places.
Don't get me started, Ashton, because Texas.
I
get it. I just want to point out that Texas's grid problems are self-inflicted.
That's what I was going to say before. They need to have electric delivery lines dropped into the ground somehow to connect to on power delivery, to deliver that power where it needs to be across this state. We don't have right now a powerful enough delivery method to get power to where it needs to be. And that's why the state has proposed to build a 76,000 acre lake. Some of that water can be dropped down via natural gravity, just the way they'll position that lake on the land. That will produce supposedly electricity and whatever else, but it'll also have water to bring 250,000 people online. The state wants to look at building out our grid. It's got to happen, and the only way that Texas, what they proposed in a meeting that I went to, is to deliver this power by micro-nuclear method. That means shoring up the nuclear so that in the event of a hurricane or other things, that they fortify these plants to be able to hopefully keep power online to critical infrastructure, which is going to cost billions of dollars to bring these nuclear plants up to code, because nuclear it burns when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't go. That's just what it is. And they're making the investment to build more nuclear, and it's a pollutant. It's not the best. It's not the best, but that is what the state is thinking to do here, so that people don't lose their lives in the next winter storm. Because just telling you, we need nuclear, and we need it right now.
Sure. That's all terrific. I'm pointing out also that Texas cut itself off from the U.S. grid. It is on its own. It is unique in this regard. And when it suffered, and the point of having larger grids working, collaborating together, is you make more available energy and fail-safe for all the participants. The more you connect it, the more valuable all the pieces become. It's like synergy. And Texas cut itself off. And so I was in Texas when they had that, freeze and the grid went down and everything. And nobody from the rest of the country could help them, even if they wanted to. And that's a weakness still that they need to fix there.
Look, I mean, we have some problems. I mean, America, generally has some problems comparative to other countries, and Qatar and other places,
I'm not down on America as a whole at all. Yeah.
But we could do better, but we have to do better here in this state in making sure that somehow we could. I just don't know how we connect power to. I don't know anything about that.
It's energy grids work like this, right? When a grid is connected, there's certain parts based on time zones and other reasons where there's less usage in one place and more usage in another. And the wider the grid is, the more they can, it costs more to shut it down and bring it back up than to just leave it running for its peak times. So this way they can share across DC current and transmission lines. And actually, Buckminster Fuller, an American genius, said that if you took all the regional grids of the world and created one continuous grid for the entire world, you would increase the energy available per person on the planet by 800% without generating another single kilowatt.
Can I add something on that? I mean, because that is an interesting theory, but they also had the coil current theory where they could literally position coils on the earth and supposedly link those coils somehow to create electricity.
I can't comment on something that's proven, but I can comment on what is proven is that the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States and the East Coast of Canada and the East Coast of the United States and all sorts of grid interactions take place now, so that when there is one part of the grid that's down, another part covers. And that's why I point out Texas as an exception in this. This was like Texas wanted to be its, Lone Star culture. We can take care of our own grid kind of thing. And that's how that happened. It was driven by culture, not by necessarily what's good for the state. But I'm just saying, the way energy grids work. And the world is an island surrounded by water. It is not actually like the way our maps look at all, if you really look at it from space. And if you took all the grids of that island and made them one long grid, you'd have all this extra energy for every person on the planet without polluting a thing.
Yeah, but then if you connected that, my problem is, because I like looking at stuff from a big lens, how do you, it's kind of like a DC current or other currents, but over water. How do you then defeat the current? I'm just saying
you don't have to go over water. If you look up something called the Dymaxion map, that's Dymaxion, Dymaxion map, it will show you that the world in fact is not like the map we see in school, where the east is east and the west is west and there's this big ocean between them. What you actually see in the world, the way it really is that it's one strip of land, most except for Australia and New Zealand, a little off to the side there, but the rest of it is all like one long strip. In fact, between Russia and the United States, there's 3 kilometers.
I say something as I look at this globe. We gonna get a globe, but I'm not I've got a globe on the table. Can I say something to you, brother? When I do my latitude and longitude lines, that ain't making no sense, brother. When you have a North Pole and South Pole that cools this planet down at good rates, keeps the weather steady. I don't understand what you're talking about. And the planet itself, I believe, is a round globe and not some strip like a
No, it is a round globe. The man who coined the term spaceship Earth that everybody uses now and actually created the mathematics of synergy is the man who described this. And he said that it is a round globe. It's a spaceship of Earth that is mostly water, and it's a strip of land on that water. And when we clarify that, when we clarify that, we make better engineering decisions. This is a man who was so precise that when he would walk, what you and I would say is upstairs, he'd say, I'm walking outstairs. And when he's walking down, he'd say, I'm walking in-stairs. This is a man who created the mathematics of synergy. And what he showed, the maps that you and I grew up with are wrong. Like the way once people thought the world would be.
I have a very nice globe. It's $500. Real nice. Let me tell you something. I'm looking on here. I can show you really a nice globe. It doesn't show. I don't see strips of land.
I understand that's the point I'm making. What you're having represented to you there is not the dynamic. Look, if you want to understand or just tell me why you don't understand something you haven't seen, you'd have to see what I'm describing so you can actually validate it or not. If you then looked, and after you looked at it, then you went, no, I still think my globe is more right than this, fine. But look, at least look.
Pangea, please. If you look up Pangea, that big old blob there may be of existence.
I'm going to stop, Ashton. I'm going to stop saying this to you because I've already given you how you can validate it for yourself, but I don't need to argue something you haven't looked at. If you've looked at it, then I'd be happy to argue.
Can you pull it up or send me a link?
Well, I'll pull it up for you right now.
Thank you, please. That's what I was asking. Can you pull it up, please? I know nothing about this planet like that. Let me pull up and I'm so sorry, brother. I'm looking at a globe.
The things you do in Clubhouse. Here it is.
Yeah, I'm alright.
Yeah, it's fine to be ridiculous. But we'll just increase 800% energy per person on the planet, Anthony, while you just sit around and be afraid.
And we are stronger together
Yeah,
than we
well,
are
pull the new first class screen.
What good is it if you're alone?
Yeah, they never made a statue again. They just don't say that. Why bother to make the world work for 100% of humanity? Seems to me like a very good outcome. That's why I bother. Okay, cool. So, if you look at the Dymaxion map, this is a deeply mathematically inclined engineer of all time. You'd put him in the top 100 minds of all time. For sure. He'd have to be in that list. And he said that basically the way we shape what we believe is possible is even affected, in his opinion, I'm just making, of how we misunderstand the actual representation of the real world in the physical plane. And remember, this is a man who coined the term spaceship Earth that people use routinely or use synergy that he defined the mathematics of. This is a man who had 70 or 80 patents. He had 50 predictions for the year 2000. 49 of the 50 came true. He's designed the geodesic dome, which is arguably the first redevelopment of the basics of architecture in 4,000 years. So like, it's not a small mind that's proposing that in the Dymaxion map, what he's able to demonstrate with better proportions than the Mercator projection map that we see in school growing up and look as the normal map from which your globe is made. You can get Dymaxion globes, but there are people who believe this is a more accurate way of looking at the Earth. And if it does turn out to be mathematically, even if it looks weird to you or me, mathematically true, then his engineering proposal, like building bridges, is that if you connect regional power grids together, you make more available energy for everybody of the grid.
You know what?
It's not a bad idea.
Look, I mean, look at that globe there. That don't look like no cheap old globe that I just went go get at no dollar store now. You see that globe? It's beautiful. Everything is etched out, perfect there. The country there within Africa is a beautiful globe, brother.
It is. Yeah, so is Star Wars or whatever movie you like. Like, I'm just saying, like, if you want to produce in the real world, you got to see how things are really and clearly, which is hard to do, but we still need to try.
Are you able to pull that up in a shot or some kind of screenshot so I can see this map? Like I said, I'm looking at a real globe with my hand on
Did
it
you,
right there
did
now.
you pull up the link that I put in there or no? Did you see the link in the chat?
Bring it up and it wouldn't open. I was trying to bring that link.
Anybody else have a problem? I brought it up. It came right up.
I had another thing. Let's see if I can bring that up.
Okay.
Take a look at.
That's basically looking down at the Earth from space according to that mathematics. And it goes through and, describes its comparison, how it's put together, and you can, like, do a comparison, like, of show Dymaxion. You can ask your favorite chat GPT, what does the Dymaxion map show versus the regular map, which is called the Mercator projection. Demonstrate or illustrate about the reality of the physical world. It's a very good question to ask your favorite chat GPT.
I can see from the link, and it's nice to hear you in here.
Hey, thanks for that.
That is an interesting map, kind of. I don't have a globe that looks like this. I'll have to take a look at that, and somebody that I know that is really good at math, and they do a lot of math stuff. I will give that to them and tell them to take a look at that. But like I said, the globe that I have that I'm holding my hand on, that globe costs well over $500. I didn't get that at no dollar store.
No. It's a beautiful globe, just like you're talking about. I have them as well, mostly in storage because I travel a great deal. But I was introduced today to a group of very eminent people, and the person who introduced me said, Daniel is Mr. Possible. I've never had anybody introduce me that way before, but it seemed to be very accurate for the moment. And I'm also especially Mr. Clarity, if I can be. Let's try to see things as they really are so we can do something about them.
I think the map I think it's interesting. I've never looked at this version of it's not I don't know. I just never looked at that version of the map. Like I said, I look at things like Pangea. I look at this globe that I have here because it is very, very nice, and it has all my longitude and latitude lines on it, everything that I need for what I like. But I get it. I understand that people ain't gonna pay $500 for a globe. I got it. But there was nothing else in the store that looked like the map that you showed me. What?
Yeah, the thing is, Ashton, it's not about the map. It's just about the possibilities of what that map says. Really, it was about the idea of connecting the energy grids and all that. Like, it's just
cheap. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where we were. And look, the big thing is the question of money. Is there enough money? Which is a very frequent topic in our conversation, because I don't think anybody can argue that there's a fixed amount of money, which means it's more like a tap. And the question is how much is in the tap?
It's got to come from somewhere. I mean,
well, does it? Have I ever? I mean, I form capital for a living. I really do. And I can tell you it does come from something. But what it comes from is merely agreement. When you get a loan from your bank, if you get a loan from your bank, they're not going and getting it from the Federal Reserve, from a quantity of money that exists for the United States, say, hey, we need some of that so we can go lend that. That is not where it comes from. The bank issued that.
I totally get that. Yes, I get that.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
all right. So the money is created by something, does come from somewhere, but that somewhere is agreement. And the question is there a limit to agreement? There is, but the limit is not how many agreements we make, it's how many agreements we can keep. And that is only supported by how much the economy can sustain. That's why inflation is a very important thing to handle. That's why guys who make blockchain and crypto launches have to have monetary policy the way that countries only used to have monetary policy. Because if you put too much supply of capital at once in a way that dwarfs the system, then it will absolutely cause inflation and raw buying power. But other than that, of what the economy can actually handle, there is no limit to how much money you can give people if it's buying power that can be converted into real goods and services and stimulate the economy. It's friggin' false. People are going to look back on this time 100 years from now like the way we look at people who thought the world was flat when it comes to money. None of us understand what money is about because it is truly limitless, so limitless that we actually have to put limits on it just to make it work. That's how limitless it is.
From, but a lot of other folks look at it maybe upside down and say, for me, it's not limitless. My bank account ain't this or whatever. And for some people, money there is a limit. And so that's what the general public would see. But maybe somebody like you maybe even see some limit, even in the large capital that you're able to raise. The economy can only bear so much, but how can we make the economy be able to bear more? That's not fair either.
No.
Fair. I'm sorry.
How to bear more is by how to make more, not to redistribute more. We don't have time to do that. Like, we want
The taxpayers, though, not us.
Okay, like I said before, the monetary economy is 270 times, I didn't say how much bigger, I just said it was bigger, is 270 times bigger than the real economy. I just want everybody to take this, hold on, I'm giving you a really, really big piece of information most people have never heard before. The monetary economy is 270 times the size of the real economy in GDP. Now, there's zero tax on the big whale doing all the movement of money, and there's a ton of tax. People fight over how much tax and who should be taxed and all of that. In the real economy, I'm talking about the monetary economy. And when you figure out the mathematics of it, you take the time to go through it, as I have, you will find out that a tiny tax on the 270 times larger economy can wipe out to zero all the taxes on the real economy. That's how much of a big gap hole in our knowledge and education about what I just said is. But I could explain it to a 5-year-old. I could show, here's a bucket, here's another bucket. This one's the M, this one is the R, and on the M, we're doing nothing, we're not taking anything, and we're running everything on the R, and the R is tiny and having to carry all the weight. A 5-year-old can understand this.
No, I get it, brother, but when you're talking to, I guess, the general public, they're looking at their real lives in this functioning economy, which should not have to take on all of the burden, like you said, this second.
No, I'm talking about the movie. Ashton, break it down what I'm saying rather than just taking the opposite side automatically. Maybe we'll have a little clarity come out.
Sorry.
What I'm saying is, it's okay, we all do it. What I'm saying is how many people are in this room? We're all ordinary people, okay? I'm not even American, and I have vested interest in why I'd like to push this, by the way, and I'll come out with that about why that in doing the material I'm doing and the actions I'm taking. But what I'm saying right now is, if everybody just understands there's a big hole in the system, and if you fix this one hole, you flip the script on every conversation about what there's enough of and not enough of to pay for. Everything, okay? You can end the debt in 8 years. You know what you can do with that savings? You understand, like, You pay more right now for interest on the debt than you do on the military. Does anybody know that? If you didn't know that, it's news for me tonight. Okay? That's how big it is. So if you can pay off that debt in 8 years, you no longer have to pay that interest cost. You basically have like the military, the size of the military, to now spend on other things. And we can argue about, now we can have a fight about what we have too much money to spend on. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, conflict comes when there's scarcity. If you can solve scarcity as much as you possibly can, not perfect in everything, but if you can do that in some sort of measured way, then it frees up creativity for everything else, and that's what produces a bigger economy in the end. You don't have to share a limited pie, you go make a bigger pie. You invest it in human beings. That's basically
how do you then get the lobbyists and all these other people, other folks to then lean in and start
Would you like to hear my plan for that? I got a plan for that. I got a plan. Here it is.
You can't make them do anything. It's tough.
Hold on. So let's see if you think I have a plan for that. Let's assume I do and give me the... Yeah, okay. So, because this is an issue which matters to both conservatives and liberals, I'm going to start a super PAC that's going to raise money from big fish and little fish who all care about the very idea of ending the debt from both sides. And I'm then going to go recruit 50 candidates across the nation that want to run on this idea. The super PAC will spend money on the issue. The candidates will run that they're with the issue. And that will put it on the agenda so that people know about it. Because the truth of it is, the lobbyists are not in control. You, the ordinary people, are in control in 2026. And that is because you have these communication tools to mobilize and organize, because that's what changes the world, not lobbyists. Okay? Sorry to say. What is going to happen is then in the next candidacy after that, it will grow from 50 to 150 and become a caucus and actually be able to get the legislation passed. And I predict that a presidential candidate will run on it as well. Because who the hell wants to... Yeah. Who the hell wants to run against ending the U.S. debt? Tell me.
I mean...
And then I'm going to, on top of that, raising not only millions of dollars in recruiting candidates, the book I'm putting out is going to answer the question you're asking. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And how are we going to get it through the House? And what about all these obstacles and so on? And right in the book, we're going to say, the way you can do it is you having everybody hearing my voice right now, having conversations with each other, ordinary people that you think have no power, your grandmother, your kid, your cousin, to get the conversation out in real people about how the debt can be ended in 8 years. Get the people to be so knowledgeable about this that candidates won't be able to run from it. Because the true power is the people, not the people in power. The people don't know that, and they don't know how to organize enough, but they are in fact the power.
We can help. I mean, we got folks that know how to organize and can help folks organize. I mean, there's no excuse if you are with the church or other organizations. Certainly can help folks get themselves together and organize and march. I mean, when Kamala Harris and other folks ran locally out here, we have mobilized 10,000 people that we can muster and get those folks moving on foot and knocking on doors. So we really did get that going. So folks do know how to grassroots, organize, and so those things you learn through history. But what I can say about what you're talking about, I would like a copy of that book because I can get it to somebody who they know about money, because they do the budget for the church and land stuff, so they're a lot smarter than me, and they went to school for that. So if anybody knows about math, it's this person, and if they know about business, I bet you it's them. So I would certainly like to check that book out and see how that math compares and see where that's at and how that can be used to literally maybe even...
Yeah, I do a lot of I do a lot of moonshots in my work, and somebody writing in the chat that'll never work because of pension funds who occupy debt and never want to see debt ended and so on and so forth. Everybody always people always have an idea when somebody proposes an idea of who it won't work for, and therefore because it doesn't perfection work for everybody, therefore it has no value, and that's how we don't have an economy that grows when people have great ideas. I'm a change agent. I know what makes change is agreement, and regardless of whether the pension funds are against this or that, if I get enough agreement to actually make it happen, then it actually happens. That's the end of the story, right? That's
Daniel, I have a question for you, Daniel.
Yeah.
First of all, this is fascinating. It's good to hear you really talk about this because I've been aware of your work. We've talked a tiny bit. But I have a question, which is, how do you, I understand exactly what you're putting forth. How do you, the obstacle that I immediately see are you're going against the power of the billionaires in this world who would resist this and who would perhaps be threatened by it and would object to it or compete with it. That's my question.
It's really interesting to bring that up. So I'm big talking about agreement, all forms of wealth, change, justice, and even power are created by agreement. I'm literally doing a tour in Ghana for 10 days coming up in September that's all themed around the power we make, not the power we take. 5,000 young Ghanaian entrepreneurs. And I'm bringing that up because there's a culture around the world of people operating outside of government, including them, to make the world work and basically make the 1% irrelevant. They're not in their way because we don't have to take from the billionaires to make for everybody else. I'm just going to tell you I'm proving that. And I think, bringing up my friend Buckminster Fuller, he said, you don't change things by fighting an existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the old one obsolete. Now, any of the change I'm talking about by agreement, I've come to say that the reason why agreement is difficult is because we're all basically warriors. We all come from 70,000 years of war, and we have war instincts. And we've made language war. We do it right here on Clubhouse all the time. We all hear it better here as Clubhouse people than anybody else, I think, out there. And my proposition is that, we can actually produce more for everybody and have everybody participate with less sustainably without having to take from anybody, including the grandfathered in billionaires who I don't care about. Because I think there's so much capable for us to do that I don't have to waste my time is kind of how I look at it. Now, I'm not talking about injustice or crime or any of that has to be addressed from a legal standpoint or anything. I don't want to ignore history completely type of thing. But I'm much more interested in the present and the future and what can I scalably do. For example, if I can get 1,000 impact funds to be created over 10 years that are going out and investing in actual human outcomes, even for profit, by the way, if I can get those created and out there in the world, I don't really have to go after the billionaires to do that or even deal with that. You see what I'm saying? So I look at it incrementally as the short answer to your question. What can I do incrementally and measurably and see what that can do within the time that I'm here? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
I don't like that the world needs lots of people who aim to do what I do. It's a very big community, people should know, who are what I call world game workers, even if they don't call themselves that I do, who are in the non-governmental, in entrepreneurial / space. They're not on the news. You don't hear about them. I mean, I can tell you the story of this Ghana group. It's started by one young man who started a nonprofit but devoted to entrepreneurial culture in Ghana. 70% of the people in Ghana are under the age of 30, highly youth population, and he set out to give them a pathway to create their own job, as he said it, rather than having to look for a job. That was his one idea. One guy comes up with this idea, and today he has 5,000 young Ghanaian entrepreneurs at his annual convention, and both presidential candidates. It's a must stop on their tour in the election campaign. Like, when I say ordinary people have power, real power, I'm not blowing smoke or talking about idealism. And I don't like the fact that I think governments are failing. Like what used to be done by NASA, research and development type stuff, that now has to happen in the private sphere. That's very unsafe for society that that's even needed. But that's what people like me are working on. How to make basically a bank for moonshots. A bank for moonshots to invest in human outcomes and not fantasies, like stuff that we know that works, but it doesn't have a good business model, right? Like, it just needs long term. Like, you can get all the water you need out of the atmosphere powered by the sun for every human being on this planet. What I just stated, I could prove mathematically with today's technology, scalable, but it's not really profitable to put it in where people already have water running from the taps. It's a business model problem. And if you invent a new way to finance it, which I'm hoping to do, other people too are working on ways too. But if a new way can be invented to finance these things, you create a time machine with money. If you can make the money work, it speeds up time because money is based on agreement. And if you have lots of agreement, you have lots of power. It's not the lobbyist hands. It's not even the influence you buy with them. It's just understanding you make power by agreement. A lobbyist is one kind, so is a bunch of people marching in the streets. For some reason, he hasn't asked to come up, but he's asking in the chat, he's pointing out, I should say, that we need to understand the fundamental nature of debt before we can start tackling the debt issue. Because most folks just think that debt is money owed. That's not true, and he is correct. And I'm going to put a link here in the chat. We did a 4-part series. It's on here on Clubhouse. Anybody can listen to it on replay. We apply topics to the conversation of is there enough? And this was, is there enough? Oops, sorry, I put the wrong link there. I was saying replay. Is there enough? America was the series we did, a 4-part series. And we linked to a documentary on that page talking about modern monetary theory. There are definitely people, who are very opposed to it and disturbed by it and so on. And it's a very provocative documentary there called Finding the Money, which talks about modern monetary theory, but over and above the fact that it's talking about that, it's making some very specific points about how government funds operate in a way that not only surprise general people, but even people who have been in positions of power like the Treasury, who are interviewed on camera who you can obviously realize they themselves don't know what money is. And he is absolutely correct. Okay, thanks, Robert. But what Robert is saying is we don't really understand the nature of debt. In fact, when money is created out of the Federal Reserve, which is basically the world's money until that changes, and if it does change, it changes. But until it does, the Federal Reserve printing American dollars is printing world dollars. They're global dollars for the most part. And when it prints that with unlimited, other than limitations it places on itself, to do that, they have to put it into a record of something real. It has to move from the monetary to the real. This is why the understanding of these two components matters very much in the modern world. But when they do that, they have to convert it into a transaction, and so they put it into a debt. It isn't like they borrowed the money. It's really weird when you start to think about it. You'll hear it right on the reporting if you go listen to the replay on Is There Enough America? It's part 2. Is There Enough America? Part 2 is the economy. And we talk about this and also how to end the debt in 8 years on there in more detail. And money is what we agree that it is. That doesn't mean it's funny money. It's very real. Agreement is like a bond, a contract. Like when it says the full faith and credit of the United States, it means the full faith and credit of the United States. It's not nothing. The gold standard, you hear these people go, oh, everything was fine, we went up the gold standard. First of all, you would not want the standard of living you had prior to the gold standard in America or in the world. Sorry, you would not. Going off the gold standard, if you're going to look at results, regardless of what we say about the debt now, right? The results, that's a big factor of standard of living. That doesn't mean everything is perfect in the modern world, and a lot has harmed our planet. So that's a different issue. And I'm not talking about perfection, but as far as that's concerned, going off the gold standard has proven to be great. But even a gold standard was an agreement, because the word standard just means agreement. It could have been, manganese standard, or it could have been the copper standard, or it could have been any sort of standard. The Phoenicians had 2 tablets. You go take a copy of the tablet because you can't easily change your tablet. That was the proof. That's basically how blockchain works, the proof part, right? So the Phoenicians had those tablets of proof. It's just created by human beings. There's no limit to it at all, other than what's in the real economy. That is a limit, but it's not in the money part. And the sooner we understand that, the faster people will not be struggling. And universal income, it's inevitable. You cannot avoid it, because the automation of technology is going to make it necessary for the world to function, that people just have buying power and can go out and build companies and take ideas and their poetry and their music and whatever they want to do with their life. So they don't have to work for a living. They can live. They don't have to. I'm mixing this up, but they can live how they want to live. They don't have to work for a living. They can live for a living. If there's enough to go around, that is. If there isn't enough to go around, then we have to do all this scrounging around and fighting. But if there is realistically in the aggregate enough to go around, it isn't distributing it. It's making people themselves have the buying power to go out and make it work. We can absolutely pay for it. Hello, KR. Yeah, Robert, I am not a big fan of government universal income. I'm a huge fan of universal income happening on a private, non-governmental, non-tax basis. if you can make this system work, like, how do you guys think this is working, right? They're selling all our data, right? You ever seen those games where they go, hey, our game has no ads? Because they figured out how to make money from the marketing without the ads. That's all. That's it. They created a supply chain out of that. It's just how it is. How much further can I go down this rabbit hole here on this universal income? Would you like to hear how it possibly could be done on a private basis? Jeremy? Dan? Al? How are you, First Lady?
Sure, go ahead.
So we produce social impact projects. We have clients as well as some that we take some interest in. And one of my clients came to me with the concept of how to make universal income on a private basis. This was his proposition. And before I tell you how it would work, even if you have the best way for it to work in theory, the only way it can work in practice is if you solve first. You know how you like solve for X and then you know everything else. So it turns out in studying how to make this happen, I figured out that even with his genius idea, the key thing is that you can get a vendor, a merchant, somebody providing a good or service to accept that money. If they don't accept it, it's nothing. And if they do accept it, it's something. So I have a plan for how to handle that part on a test and up basis to demonstrate it to the world. So let's say I can do it in a small regional size area to prove it, such that when the vendor provides a good or service that somebody spends the money that they were issued as universal income money and spend it, they get to convert it into whatever dollars or currency that they want. We would guarantee that for the test. And the way it would work is we would issue to a wallet whatever amount of universal income we had agreed on, and we actually do not use the term basic income on purpose. We call it universal income, and we actually let the receiver of that universal income set their own amount. Bear with me. They set their own monthly amount, and it's issued to them on a daily basis, and when it enters their wallet, it's on a timer. And that timer has 90 days, meaning they must spend that money within 90 days or it disappears worthless. Now, when they take that money that could become worthless, which they now, Jeremy, have a financial incentive to obviously stimulate the economy and invest that money, so you realize what we're putting in people's hands isn't money, but buying power. Temporary buying power, just like the way you'd issue money during World War II to the troops when they're out somewhere not in the country, and then they back it up by something else. And so they now go to the grocery store, they pay their rent, or they pay their school tuition, or they start a business, or whatever they're doing with their universal income that they must spend within that 90-day period. The person or the entity that they're buying their good or service from, when they receive that money, it gets converted into hard currency. And that hard currency has no expiration. The one that they came in the universal income has expiration, and the other one does not have expiration. And for those of you who happen to be listening in the room that understand mining and proof of stake and proof of work and proof of this and proof of that, will understand that at the moment of purchase is when the mining has taken place, which is the closest to perfection you could get. Because when you go from the Federal Reserve into a form of debt, you're mining the debt, you're mining the money into a debt, carrying a false debt just to keep the world economic system running. What we're talking about here is putting buying power into people's hands that gets converted into real hard and well-earned currency by those who provided a real valuable product or service that the people with buying power wanted to go out and buy. That's a working economy.
Question.
Yes.
So what is the limit on how much people would receive How high can they set their daily limit?
We're not putting a limit on it.
Okay, so let's use an example. Okay, I choose $1 million a day. Okay.
Yep.
I'm part of the participant. I spend that $1 million by buying all the food in the grocery store and just giving it all out to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens
In that situation.
in that situation?
With respect, and I really want to answer your question in context, if you don't mind, I want to point out that part of why it's hard to implement ideas, we seem to think that reality comes from playing devil's advocate with the extremes to show the stress test. And we don't quite give enough air to looking, first of all, at I'm a change agent, right? So I look at predominance, not perfection. On the certainly 80% of effect of that activity, that somebody might, let's say, do an extraordinary $20,000 a month, let's say not $1 million a day, because they're going to have the job of spending that money, and they're going to find out that when they are taking on too much, they will actually have some penalty for that, right? And they're not going to be able to, because it's going to be a game like any other economic system, right? And so they're going to be, I'm only answering the question about whether it's limited or not, right? There's going to be some checks and balances that are going to emerge when we test it and flesh it out. But I think if you want to understand it, it's first, before you take your oppositional side, is examining what parts of it actually work, right? Because if somebody receives an amount that's a higher amount than me, it doesn't matter, because we're not operating from a limit of money. We're operating by what the actual economy can absorb. It's a very different take on it, right? And so when I put too much money in somebody's hands, it is a point of waste. That's going to end up being shown up in the system, and we'll have some checks and balances for that. But we're not going to let some central system decide what is an appropriate amount of money that people should have, because then you're having that whole system you're trying to get away from in the first place. You don't need that. People can decide for themselves what they're capable of sustaining.
All right, so please answer the question. I have $1 million daily.
I'm understanding you want to repeat that question like you think it's really salient. I'm going to work out a problem of that sort.
Because all I heard was you shouldn't look at that question, right? That's an irrelevant question.
I'm not saying it's irrelevant, not at all. I don't mean to convey that. But I will say, as a guy who's a project manager, I have certain kinds of questions I must ask, and then the ones I need to get to. And I'm sure that kind of question will come up even more. But when we test it out, we will discover whether there are some people gaming the system of any kind of system we put up. I build apps. I have to do that in communities all the time. I don't think the situation you're talking about is likely to be realistic. And so I will come to it.
Daniel.
My team need to, and I don't really need your approval. I'm just saying to you, I am already moving forward with it without that question yet being.
I'm not saying you're not able to do what you're going to do. I'm asking a question. You're saying that it's not possible. But
No, I didn't say it's not possible.
I asked you what the limit.
No. You didn't say. You did not. I did not. I'd like to clarify for myself what I said. What I am saying is, I am not saying it's not possible. But as a change agent for a living, I look at the 80%. Let me finish my statement, because I'm the author of this, right? I get to put my context on it, Jeremy, if you don't mind, even if you disagree. I look first in my implementation at the 80% of the problem, and then I will deal with the 20. And it is up to me, not you, to determine which is 80 and which is 20. I don't start things from extremes. I start things from predominance. And I know people who are given the opportunity to have buying power are probably not going to have a lot of incentive to game the system. And the scenario you describe of amassing and hoarding stuff from the grocery store to hand it out to people, those people are not going to have an incentive to get it from you, because they're going to have their own money.
So you're saying that that's not going to happen?
Yes, I'm saying it's not going to happen.
So what if we play it out with $20,000?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do 20,000.
Go for it.
You told me there's no limit. That's why I
Yeah,
asked that question
that's where
first.
you went. I know that's where you went, and I thank you for allowing us to reasonably, talk this out. It's a fair question. I just think yeah, I don't want, in the test we're attempting, and it could fail, right? There's lots that need to be tried, so ours could fail, okay? But what we're attempting to do is where people set their own income levels. That's what we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, that's the hypothetical, right?
Absolutely. Well, when do it,
People can set their own income levels. There's a lot of, human nature. They're gonna say, okay, how much can I set it for,
mm-hmm.
right? Obviously, when things play out,
Mm-hmm.
things might balance themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but what are you gonna do in the beginning stage when people
Yeah.
say, you know what, let's see what I could do.
Let's see what happens. Get away with it. Yeah. No, I think it's fair, but just imagine how much different the world is going to be when people think this is a problem compared to the problem people have now, where they're scrounging around and unable to pay their bills, and if they get hit with a $400 unexpected bill, something like 60% of America, and that's the richest country in the world, would have a real problem. Okay, that's a problem. The problem we have now is arguing about, can we handle the fact that we could end up having too much money? That's a pretty good change of problem. And as my friends who are much better change agents than me and group partners say, they say, if you ask the wrong question, you solve the wrong problem. When you shift the question people are asking from, what are we going to do with all the money we really have, from what are we going to do with the fact we don't have money, and we have to worry about all this stuff we're putting on our great-grandchildren and how they're going to have to pay off debt and all this bullshit that I've been hearing since I was a boy. I've been hearing how we're going to go off a cliff with the debt, like as if the Chinese are going to show up with trucks and start repossessing American.
We're getting a little bit off topic.
No, we're totally on topic because we're on the topic of money. They're on the topic of money. That's the topic. Is there enough money for this? And I'm saying the wrong question. Is there enough money? Is there enough capacity for all the money we can put at it? Which is actually based on human beings. Human beings produce more wealth than they consume, but we call them consumers. And that language makes them smaller of a contributor than they are in fact. There has never been an economy on this planet Earth that hasn't grown from immigration, even though every time it's happened, people have fought about it to the death. Okay? Human beings are what propel the economy. And when you put dollars in their hands or any other form of buying power in their hands, they use it mostly very wisely. And I don't care if we do it by government or private, we ought to have 1,000 experiments. And I don't want to pick apart this experiment and that experiment, and you don't need to pick apart mine, but you can if you want to, or anybody else's. But I'm going to fund thousands of them until we find ones that work. And I know other people who feel the same way that I do.
All right, I might have missed something. Where does the funds come from? I know you said that they're temporary funds. You use it or lose it. Where does the funds come from?
The goods and services that people buy with it, that's where they come from.
No, where does the funds that people receive come from? From the
It's issued to them by nothing but an agreement. It's just literally fiated to them.
No, but where's the actual money coming from to begin with, Daniel?
What is money?
If money is $20,000 in my bank account, where is the money coming from?
Is money also Bitcoin today? Not just cash, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's not made by a government, is it?
Correct.
Okay, it's made by human beings who've collaborated and agreed that has value, and otherwise it wouldn't have any value. So now, when you say where does it come from, where did Bitcoin come from? It came only by human. Nothing else.
It came from humans. My
Right.
question is...
But humans are doing a specific thing, though, that I'm saying is adaptable to this conversation, which we need to do to have this conversation at all.
So what you're saying is that, hundreds of thousands or millions of humans contribute to the money that is then distributed to everybody? I'm asking you, where's the source?
The source is the wealth, not the money. That's the problem in this language of the way we say, where does the money come from? When I was a boy, my parents would say,
Well, then why were we taught this stupid stuff? Like the way we say things, it doesn't seem like it's current with the way you say stuff. Like that's the way we're taught. I'm sorry if a lot of us weren't taught like a uppity education, but it can be learned the right way. So if there's a right way for us to save money and other things, or dividend or whatever, it's certainly open to learning,
I
because
appreciate
my
that.
school just tells us money. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know any of this. I was about to say my parents taught me that money doesn't grow on trees, but they didn't tell me what tree it grows on. And
Thank you.
the tree it does grow on is the tree of agreement. See, we think wealth is based on resources and possessions and all that shit. It's not. It's based on agreement. The DRC is the second lowest, poorest country on earth, and they have 24 trillion in the ground. They have very little agreement. They have a lot of war. Okay, agreement is what makes wealth, not war. Even though we treat it like a wartime economy,
Why we
even now.
measure people's possession, land, homes, or things they own if it's because guess what? People in the world, you know, I have this big house. I have, you know what I mean? Like people compare themselves with hard assets. So I don't know. Maybe the way I was taught is backwards. Hell, I don't know. That's what it sounded like. Yeah,
But it's because you agree on that. Let me give you an example. If you go to certain parts of the world, you don't have clear land title. You don't have like a land registry office the way you're used to, things like that. Anytime you see a part of the world where land registry is not clear, it's not a very well-off country. You can even see it in a tiny country where a part of it doesn't have land title and another part does, like in Panama. There's this island called Toboga where they're not really sure, is that guy's land? Was that his father's? And it's not all that clear. And the price per square foot is absolutely less, just within the same country. Because wealth is made by agreement. And money is made by agreement. When you understand that, and I'm telling you, I'm from the capital.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I understand the contractual stuff, but a lot of people look at whether you live in the poorest country in the
What is this? What is that? You have enough privilege on your own. Go back and reflect right now. Trump go back and reflect.
India's bad right now because Trump had a whole bunch of fucking